We are live on Yonkers Voice, and our guest of honor today is Victor Fuhrman. Did I say that name correct, Victor?
Absolutely, Ruth. Thank you so much, and thank you for asking me to join you this morning.
Victor, I've been practicing how to say your name for the last 2 days because I always mess it up on last names, but somehow I said it right. I said it correctly. Victor, you are an amazing guy. I read about what you do. You are a Reverend Doctor, and you connect. You are the bridge. You are the bridge between science and spirituality. Is that? Did I say it right?
Absolutely, science and spirituality.
How does that connect, Victor?
What we're learning today is that some of the things that we consider to be in the realm of spirit are actually something that quantum physics is establishing as part of the world of science. And it all goes back to the concept of what are we? We have these carbon-based containers, these bodies, and then we have our soul, what people call the soul or the spirit. And what is that? That's energy. And science teaches that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but changes from form to form. So what happens when we transition? What happens when we pass? What happens to that energy? And people believe in reincarnation in some cultures and faiths. Some people believe that we linger in this realm because we died unexpectedly, and that's accountable for some of what they call hauntings or ghosts. And so consequently, all of these things are connected. It's really interesting. When I was a kid, I had a lot of experiences when I was 5 and 6 and 7 growing up in Brooklyn, New York. And as I had mentioned to you in our previous conversation, I had experiences both with what I considered to be extraterrestrial intelligence or extra-dimensional intelligence and UFOs, and also with disembodied spirit. And when I was 7 years old, I was very close to my paternal grandfather, who spoke with me as a child. He was in his 80s at the time, spoke with me as a child, not as a child, but as someone who would understand what he was sharing. And one day I was 7 years old and I was in my room and I looked up and my grandfather's standing there. I said, "Grandpa, where did you come from?" And he didn't say a word. He just smiled and he sort of disappeared. And I went into the living room and I said to my parents, "Grandpa was here." And they said, "You're imagining things." And 2 minutes later, the phone rang with word that my grandfather had passed away. That was my first conscious recognition of disembodied spirit.
Now, Victor, when you had that experience, what did you feel? Were you afraid? Were you surprised? Were you scared when you saw the image of your grandfather?
Not at all. I actually was very pleased, and I found it to be very comforting that he would come, and in retrospect, comforting that he would come to visit me just before he left the world.
But at that time, you did not know that he had left the world yet, correct?
Correct. But again, all of these things that happened to me when I was, people talk about UFO experiences or abduction experiences, and they put a negative spin on it. Every experience that I've ever had in this realm has been a positive, life-affirming experience.
But not all experiences are positive, Victor. Correct? Or am I wrong?
I think it depends on how you view and approach it. One of the things that got me involved in paranormal investigation in the early 2000s was the fact that there were all these shows about ghost hunting and that type of thing. And to me, if I were a human being who passed away and my essence was stuck here, I wouldn't want to have people hunt me or confront me. I'd want to have people help me to make me understand what had happened and to help me move forward. And that was my role in the paranormal teams that I belonged to. I would help spirits cross over.
But that is what about the yin-yang of this world? Does that exist also on the other world where there is a positive energy and negative energy? Not all spirituals or not all presences are like your grandfather. That is, I think, there might be some bad experiences, no?
I can only speak from my personal experiences. I can't speak for others.
But Victor, let's talk about your knowledge, not personal experience. Yes, we have things that we have experienced that we can talk on it. Okay, I experienced this. This was mine. Okay, I had this experience and it was very positive. But then there is the general knowledge that you might have that is not your personal experience, but things that you have learned through the years, correct?
Absolutely. I've talked to people who have had what they consider to be UFO abductions, who felt that they were taken against their will, and whose experiences were frightening and repetitively frightening. The famous one might be the case of Betty and Barney Hill, and their Betty's niece and Barney's niece. I interviewed her several times, and they were afraid. It was a fearful experience for them. On the contrary, I've talked to many, many people who've had very positive experiences. So I guess it's what we bring to it, our understanding, what we bring to it, and what we think is going on at the time. Now, that's not to say that there are people who had lived in this world and perhaps had some negativity in their personality and their approach to life and carried that negativity over. And that negativity is reflected in creating a frightening presence to others when they do appear or if they do appear. And that's not to say that every extraterrestrial being is a positive or wonderful being, that there may be some negative ones. I think there is duality. There is yin and yang in both, in everything in life. But I believe it's our approach to it and how we understand it and how we respond. It's just like when we respond to a living human person right now. There's an expression that was coined by one of the famous self-help gentlemen who said, we may not be able to control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it. And I think for me, that's what it's about.
Now, you also speak about UFOs, the life after death. You know, some people might see those two subject matters totally different. One has nothing to do with the other. Now, you might see it differently. How do you see it, sir?
It's very interesting. In 2010, I attended a local conference here in New York City of the FIONs, the Friends of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and Whitley Strieber, the gentleman who wrote the book Communion about his experiences with UFOs, and his wife, his late wife, Ann Strieber, were the keynote speakers. And they had a gathering after the main conference, and a very personal gathering. And she started talking about how after Whitley wrote the book Communion, they received hundreds of thousands of letters from people who shared their experiences with them. Those experiences also included the fact that either right before or right after they had the UFO encounter, the ET encounter, whatever you want to call it, that they also experienced the spirit of a deceased relative. And I had not thought about it until she said those words, but that's exactly what happened to me in my childhood. I had mentioned that the incident with my grandfather's spirit happened when I was 7. Well, the day after, I recall having a contact experience.
It's very complex, very, very, very complex. Give me a second here because it seems like we are having a little glitch. No, we're back on. It's very complex. Should I be afraid if I feel a presence, if I see a presence? And let's talk about different types of presence, Victor. There is people that can see it. There is people that can sense it. There's people that can smell it. There is people that can feel something around, but they cannot actually say, this is what I'm feeling, or this is what I'm experiencing. Please help me, okay? If I was to come to you and say, Victor, I feel something that I cannot actually explain. I'm in my bedroom and all of a sudden I feel an aroma passing by, or I feel like there is somebody that wants to talk to me, like somebody's watching, looking at me. What is it? What would you say, Victor? Or how would you explain? Would you tell me, no, Ru, it's time to run, it's time to panic?
No. See that's the whole thing. Modern media has made this into a scare factor. They have all these shows about hauntings and all these horrible things and these all of these things they talk about. And I say it's your approach to it that really matters. If we approach anything with fear, including people on the street, what are we living? Are we having a life? No. But if we approach it with interest, with curiosity, with respect and dignity for ourselves and for whatever we may be encountering, it's a totally beautiful experience. So my first question to you would be, what did you experience? Was it clairaudience, hearing? Was it clairvoyance, seeing? Clairsentience, feeling? Clairolfactance, smelling, which is very rare, by the way, but that people do have that. And then I would say, what did it mean to you when you heard it, you saw it, you felt it, you smelled it? That would be my first questions. And then I start a dialogue with you, trying to determine what you actually experienced.
And how do I know if my experience, if that being in front of me, next to me, wants to actually communicate with me? How would I open that channel of communication? Say, okay, I'm here. I'm not afraid. I feel that you want to talk to me. Please tell me, guide me to understand what is it that you need to communicate with me.
You exactly gave the information. That's what I would guide someone to ask. Those are exactly the things that I would ask someone to ask. And again, I think the first part of that is to determine which. I believe everyone has quote unquote psychic ability. I think for some of us it's been suppressed because we've been told in society it's not the right thing to share, especially in certain religions and religious groups. But I approach it from the standpoint of which of the clairs do you have? Are you clairaudient? Do you hear messages? Are you clairvoyant? Do you see energy or do you see things? Are you clairsentient? Do you feel? Do you have that gut reaction? Every one of us has at least one of those if we allow ourselves to develop it. So the question then would be, what is yours? Is it clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairolfactance, whatever it might be? And then I would ask you to use that sense. So if you were to say, you see things, you say, please show me what I need to know. Or if you hear things, please tell me what I would need to know. Or if you feel things, please let me feel what I need, or smell, whatever the sense is, even taste, whatever the sense is, give me an idea. And if you start the communication with respect, with dignity, with understanding, and without fear, you'd be surprised at how many wonderful answers you get.
You know, Victor, I would probably react exactly in that manner. But the reason why I would, it's because I was raised in a household that saw the spiritual world as normal, okay? We live and then we pass on and we go to another dimension, and we were not afraid of the dead. But there is lots of people around that are terribly afraid of the dead. Some don't exist, don't believe that there is something else after we die. But if they were to hear, to see something, they would run for their lives. They would be afraid. And I think we need to educate and to let people know that that is not necessary.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. Let me talk a little bit about my background with paranormal
Please.
investigations. Uh, I was a member of an organization called the Queens Psychic Club, a wonderful group that used to gather here and have meetings in Flushing, Queens, and share different types of psychic information and experiences. One of the friends that I made in the group was a woman by the name of Dee Cologne. She's a wonderful psychic medium. And she told me about this meetup for the New York Paranormal, NYC Paranormal. And I attended the meetup and I met this gentleman by the name of Dom Villella, who was the founder of Paranormal NYC. And he and I became very good friends and we became brothers, and he invited me to join the team and work with his team. And if we went on 10 investigations, now, did we go to public places? Yes, we did a lot of the public places. But the primary focus was to go to people's homes who have had some type of an experience and help them understand the experience, take away any fear that was involved in the experience, and give them an understanding and an insight as to what was going on. So consequently, 9 out of 10 of the investigations would be something that was either environmental, emotional, but something that was in the home, not paranormal, not spiritual. Be something that was either, I'm hearing myself now, I'm sorry.
Yes, I apologize.
No problem. And so consequently, 9 out of 10 times, 1 out of 10 times, there may have been an actual physical presence, a spiritual presence there, rather, not a physical presence. And my role was to help the spirit cross over. So the whole concept, show you something real fast, I don't know if this will show up, but I had this shirt made out.
Yes, it does.
And it says, I don't hunt them, I help them. And that's exactly what my role was. My role was to help not only the living, but help also the deceased, if there was a deceased spirit presence, if there was a transition spirit presence. I'll give you a couple of examples of the non-spiritual ones. This woman was complaining that she had her two children and they kept waking up and having nightmares and all of this stuff, and she thought that there was a presence in the home. And we found out that there was an electrical outlet right next to the children's bed that was not properly grounded. And for those who understand electricity, there was free floating current or voltage in the air. So we grounded the outlet. I have a background in electric, and Dom also had a background in electric. We grounded the outlet, and their nightmares went away. So again, this was not a true spiritual experience. Then, with another team, I went into this home, and there was this constant presence there, and I felt it as soon as I walked in the door. I had a conversation, and I approached it not by confronting or demanding or saying anything negative. I approach spirit, when I do find disembodied spirit, the same way I'm talking to you right now, with respect, with dignity, with compassion, with concern. And I would ask the spirit what it's about. I ask the spirit, would you like to move on? And then I would talk the spirit on into the next life. And 90% of the time, they wanted to go on. Sometimes they wanted to stay because they felt they needed to stay with their families. And that's
Now,
okay too.
Victor, based on my past experience, the living one, the one on this earth, we heard many stories, because where I come from, we are highly believe on the supernatural, highly. I'm from Mozambique, from South Africa, born in Cape Verde Island. We believe in things that normally people here in the States, in this side of the world, don't believe. We believe on the afterlife. And one of the things that we hear a lot is that sometimes there is a sudden death, where the person who dies does not actually realizes that he passed on. And he hangs around his family, his friends, because he did not came to that understanding that he's no longer part of this world, he has passed on. And sometimes that presence might not be good for the family and friends that are still on this world, and it's not good for him because he's in the middle. He doesn't realize that he needs to move on, and he doesn't realize that he's no longer here. Is this a fake or not true, or there is some truth to it?
Absolute truth to it. I've been in several situations where I've encountered a spirit that did not know that it had passed on or wanted to stay for the benefit of the family. And I would have the conversation. Do you like to stay here? Do you really need to stay here? Or would you like to go on and reunite yourself with your past family and friends who are waiting on the other side for you? And like I said, 9 out of 10 times when I did that, they would ask to be guided. And I would ask them, I would say to them, turn around and look, and you'll see this beautiful, wonderful, warm, glowing, comforting light. And in that light, you'll see your family, your friends, their arms open, waiting for you with smiles on their faces, embracing you and ready to bring you home. And like I said, there'd be peace right after that. So.
Now, I have a few stories of my own, Victor, but I'm not going to tell you about it because this interview is about you, not about me. But I will share one quick story, because that's a story that I think many people experience, but they don't realize what they are experiencing. Just before my grandmother passed away, myself, my cousins, parents were in a hospital with her. And she's talking to us. And she turned to me and to my cousin and said, guess who's here? I said, my dad is here, so is here. Oh, no, look at that corner there. And she could name a few of her older brothers, family members that has passed by. And they were in a corner somewhere. And by the way that she expressed, even with a little smile on her face, like, I'm good. I have friends here, friends that I have not seen long ago. I'm thinking that they were there to guide her. Okay. Am I right? Am I wrong?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I'll share, I had a similar experience. My grandmother, my mother's mother, lived with me and my family prior to her passing. And one day my daughter, who was, I believe she was 13 at the time, said to me, Daddy, I'm not going to go to school today. I'm not feeling well. And she never did that. So I said, of course, stay home. You can stay home. About 3 hours later, I get a call from her that my grandmother had passed away. And I said, I love you, honey. Thank you for being there. I'll get home as soon as I can. By the time I got there, the ambulance had come to take her. And she said, Daddy, she said, she called me into the room and took my hand and she said, Angel, your uncle and your grandfather and all these wonderful people are here for me. I'm going to go with them. Give me a kiss goodbye. And she kissed her and she transitioned. So my daughter had that same experience. She was 13 at the time. What a beautiful experience to have. What a life-affirming experience to have.
Well, soon after my grandmother passed, to be exact, 3 days after my grandmother passed, normally we stay in mourning for 3 days, and then 3 days later, the younger generation, we go back to our lives, school and all that. And I lived on the 3rd floor of a building. And I was coming down, and before I actually reached the door downstairs, I remember that I had forgotten a book that I needed for class. And I just turned around on the 1st or 2nd floor, I don't remember, came back up, and my mother said, did you see Pedro? I said, no, Mom, Pedro didn't pass by me. She said, oh, yeah. He passed by you because I saw him, and his daughter who's next to me also saw Pedro. But they were kind of they felt strange because Pedro was that type of a guy that when he came in or when left the home, goodbye, how you doing? How was your day? But that day, there was no reaction from Pedro. None whatsoever. So I said, Mom, I stay with you. She said, no, if you didn't see him, you didn't see him. In the meantime, I went around looking for all the rooms. I said, no, there is no one here. And I left. In the meantime, Pedro's wife comes back home. This I found out later. While they were talking to Pedro's wife in the room, they saw Pedro leaving the house. I got home later on, and my mom said, you know what? A few hours later, I was with Pedro's wife, which is Lena, and Pedro left. As we were talking, Pedro gets home, goes right to the room. How you doing, guys? What's up? How did you go? And we look at him. My mom looked at him. I said, what's wrong with you? You came in, you said nothing. You left, you said nothing. And now you come back in like nothing happens? Pedro said, I was never here, Gabi. What happened there?
It sounds like an out-of-body experience that he was not aware of, that he projected his essence out of his body, his soul, his energy. You saw it in that form, in the form of him as alive, or they saw it in the form of him as alive. Not that he had passed away, but that he had projected his energy.
Victor, Pedro was always alive.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
It was an out-of-body experience. His essence, his soul, his spirit, whatever it was, even though he was still alive, made that trip into the hallway and out. And I'll share something with you. I was called, I retired from paranormal investigating about 4 years ago. But I always said, if there's a child involved, I'll be happy to come. If there's a child who's scared, I will always come out of retirement and help. And our team went and visited this home. And I was sitting and I was thinking about the child and looking at this child. And I heard a woman talk to me and give me a name. And I said to this family and to the mother, I said, who is, and I mentioned the name. And the mother looked like startled. And I said, why? She said, that's his godmother, but she's still alive. And it turned out that his godmother so cared about him, even though she was alive, that she made a travel to him every night to make sure he was okay in spirit. What a beautiful thing. And from that point forward, he was never afraid again.
Yes. You see, Pedro, with my experience, the way I looked at it was my grandmother had died 3 days before. And my grandmother had to do something in the house, but she knew she could not appear as herself. So probably she took the image or incarnated in an image that we would not be panicking if we saw her, because if I saw her, everybody would just go crazy. Mm-hmm. So the incarnated materialized as my cousin's Pedro's body, not to panic us. Is that an explanation?
It's very possible. Absolutely. Manifested in that energy form so that it would not be frightful for you. Absolutely. One of the beautiful things, I've had a dual life. I was in business for 42 years, but I also had that spiritual life at the same time. And one of the beautiful things that I've been able to do is to work with families who've had family in hospice, had a loved one who was close to death or dying. And I'd been called into many rooms and many times. And one of the things that always is present is you have a sense that in addition to the living relatives, there are also the spirits of those who have passed on, waiting for that person to join them and with them. In January of 2020, my mom was very ill. She was in hospice. And my sister called me one day and said, I think it's close to time. And we went there. And my mom was unconscious, but you could tell by her physical motions, her movements, that she was very uncomfortable, her breathing. And I took her hand and I said, Mom, I said, Daddy's waiting for you. My father had passed when I was 15. I said, Mom, Daddy's waiting for you. I said, he's there. If you just turn around and look, he's waiting for you. And he's singing the song. Back in the time when he had passed away, there was a song called Honey, I Miss You by Bobby Goldsboro. And my mother used to sing that song for my father after he passed away. And I started singing the song to her. And I said, he's singing this to you. And honey, I miss you. And I'm being good. And I long to be with you if only I could. And we left her in peace. And a few minutes later, she transitioned. So.
Wow. I believe that your mom transitioned in peace.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And your dad might have been right there to take her and guide her.
Absolutely. Absolutely welcomed her.
That's an amazing story, Victor. UFOs, tell us about a little bit about your experiences in that field, Victor.
When I was,
go ahead.
My first conscious memory, and I'm sure there was others, I was 5 years old. And as a 5-year-old, one would think that in the 1950s, I'd be interested in trucks, in sports, in things of that nature, stuff that 5-year-old boys used to play with in the 1950s. I didn't want those things. I wanted electronic components, things to build radios with. 5 years old in 1958, kits to build radios with. Where did that come from? Well, my experiences, I used to call night school, that I'd be taken and taught things that I had no other knowledge for. I had information in my head that I had no other source for. Not that I learned in any schools, not that I read in any books, but information about things of that nature. And so I referred to my experiences not as abductions, but as night school, because I always came back with something that I had no other source for the information. And so consequently, I had no fear in my experiences. I think that the confirmation that I received later on, when I did hear that speech by the presentation by Whitley and Ann Strieber, confirmed for me much of what I had experienced as a child. And in talking to others in the subsequent years, other people have said the same thing, that they have found that their experiences were informative, educational, and not frightening. And that's the way it was for me. I remember waking up many nights after having one of these experiences, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, going to the window, looking up in the sky, and seeing what I thought were pieces of the sky rearranging themselves like a patchwork quilt, only to understand later what I was seeing was triangular-shaped craft. When I met a gentleman by the name of Wilbur Allen, at a UFO conference many years ago, and he had photographs that he had taken of these triangular-shaped craft. That's what I saw when I was 5 and 6 and 7 years old, when I'd wake up.
Now, Victor, you believe in UFOs, so you believe in other planets, other forms of life elsewhere. So we are one form of life. There is other forms of life. Is it possible, in your principle, that we move from one form of life and reincarnate on other forms of life, or vice versa, in order to purify our spirit?
Absolutely. Do you see that behind me on the other side?
Yes.
Right over here. That's called the Pleiades. That is the constellation. They call it the Seven Sisters. And I had an experience about 25 years ago where I heard someone speak, And I had an immediate sense that I had come from there at some point in time or had a lifetime in one of those planets that are in that constellation. So absolutely, there's been a lot of research and offerings by other people who say that we do incarnate, reincarnate in different worlds at different times to learn different lessons, and that life is about schooling. Life is an education that helps us grow and mature on a soul level until we're ready to not come back anymore.
So, Victor, when we get to that point of no return, we call it back where I come from, purifying. You purify your spirit. You move on, you come back to this planet as often that it might be necessary for you to purify yourself, to achieve a certain level where purification is no longer necessary. I don't know if you believe in that or if that goes in line with your principles. Now, let me ask you this. What is the last stage?
That's a good question. I've been told that I'm an old soul, that I've been around for a long, long, long time. And I always would say, my answer to that would be, I guess I must have more lessons to learn, that I still haven't learned all the lessons I need to learn. And I think, it's interesting. Life to me, I'm going to be 69 in January. Life to me is a continuous education. If you are curious, if you are thirsty for more and more and more knowledge, perhaps that's the reason why we come back. But yes, my sense is that we all come from a wonderful source, a source of energy. Some people call it God. Some people call it the infinite spirit. Some people call it 0 point. But that this essence that we all are part of is something that we will eventually go back to.
Victor, I don't know what it is. My father says it's a dream that I had when I was a child. It happens that I could never forget that dream. And normally I have dreams and the next day or 2 days ago, I don't no longer remember. But somehow this dream, I have never forgotten any details of it. I call it my past life. I call it something that I lived before. I call it my experience. Do you remember your past life? Do you remember the life that you had before? And what was it, if you do remember?
I don't have direct recollection, nor have I been hypnotically regressed. Some people do that. They do hypnotic regressions to determine past lives. I do have a sense that I've lived in Europe. I do have a sense, I've never been to Europe in this lifetime. I do have a sense that I lived in Europe. I also have a sense that I was connected to ancient Egypt and a sense that I was connected to ancient Sumeria. So these are because I've seen artifacts and read books, and the information shared so resonated with me that there would be no other explanation than I had been there in the past, in a past life.
I remember dying somewhere in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, in the mountains. I was going from one place to another. I was a small businessman in a small village, and I had to go to another part of the area in a mule to buy items that I would bring back to my village. While I'm bringing back with my mule, I remember having the turban, the clothes. I had a white interior with a little jacket, no sleeves, when there was an avalanche that came down, rocks, and that threw me down. That's the only thing I remember, okay? My dad said, Ru, that was a dream. I said, okay, it could be, but it's my experience. Regressions, Victor, we heard about the term, and lots of people are curious about it. Some people say it's okay to do a regression to know your past. Other people say, don't touch it, let it be. If it was meant for you to know, you would know. Don't look for something that there's not a clear need for it. What's your take on that, sir?
My answer would be it's personal, and my answer would be that perhaps in learning about past lives, you'll find answers to certain things that you're experiencing in this lifetime. And perhaps some of the lessons that you may have forgotten in the reincarnation process are important to make your life better in this lifetime. So again, it's personal choice, but I would not be against it whatsoever.
What else, Victor?
What else? Here's what it is. What else? I was going to tell you what else. The greatest lesson that any of us can learn in this lifetime is to love one another, care for one another, compassion. Don't see someone who is different than you as different because they're not. Everyone is our sister and our brother. And if we embrace each other as sisters and brothers, we're doing what our Creator, the universe, the energy, the source, whatever you want to call it, God, meant for us to do. To love one another. It's the foundation of every religion. If you take away a lot of the man-made regulations, it says, love your neighbor as thyself, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You find that in every faith, in every religion, in every culture. Love one another. Take care of one another. That's the message.
Very good message. Before we conclude, Victor, let's just talk about Destination Unlimited.
Yes.
Okay. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Tell us a little bit about it. Tell us a little bit about Victor the man, Victor the shows that you have, the messages that you have. If somebody wants to follow you, wants to watch your weekly shows or want to watch your YouTube channels, Instagram or Facebook, where can they find you? Hey guys, by the way, Victor is also part of my UFO Paranormal Roundtable, where we discuss everything, not just UFOs. We try to talk about all the things that we don't have an explanation for it. We can engage in conversation in a respectful way. Victor is a member of that group. So Victor, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about you, about Destination Unlimited. Tell us about it.
I do 2 podcasts weekly for Om Times Radio. It's Om Times, OM Times Radio. One is called Destination Unlimited, which is the crossroads of science and spirituality, as I had mentioned, and that's Wednesday nights at 8:03 Eastern. And they can find the link going to omtimes.com/IOM/shows. And my show is called Destination Unlimited. On Thursday night at the same time, I do one called Vox Novus. And Vox Novus talks more about some of the issues that people need to identify with today, improving their life, finding new answers in a world of confusion, that type of thing. Destination Unlimited has shows about UFOs, paranormal, virtually anything and everything that we're talking about now. Energy healing, that's very important to me. I have shows on energy healing. I have shows on alternative faiths and alternative religions. And so if it exists in the world, you'll find it on either one of those 2 shows. And on Destination Unlimited and Om Times, I'm grateful to Chris Buck and Liani Buck, the publisher and editor of Om Times magazine, for inviting me in 2016 when they met me at a wedding to be part of their family.
Victor, do you have any books out?
I co-wrote a book with my wife called Pet Prayers and Blessings many years ago. It's still available, about bringing spirituality into your relationship with your pet. A lot of our friends used to say, I'd like to have some type of spiritual welcoming ceremony or spiritual prayers for my pet. And if one loses a pet, that's a hard thing for a lot of people, sometimes harder than losing family when they lose a beloved pet. And we talk about that in that book. I've not written, but I've offered contributions to many other books, nothing that I can bring you off the top of my head. But I am writing my own book. About 5 years ago, someone said to me, how do you balance the fact that you have a day job in business, of all things, industrial sales, and the night job in spirituality? And I said, very simply, it came to me, I said, the day job pays my salary, the night work pays my solary. This word solary came out of me, and my book will be called Solary, The Compensation of Spirit, and it should be out next year. Well,
Victor, keep us posted when the book comes out. But in the meantime, some of the folks might be interested in buying the book that you and your wife wrote. Is the book still available? And if it is, where is it available? What's the title and how can we get it?
The book is called Pet Prayers and Blessings, written by Lori Sue Brockway, that's my wife, and Victor Fuhrman, that's me. And you can get it on Amazon.
Victor, thank you. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Very enlightening conversation. Hopefully we help others that are watching this realize that there is nothing to be afraid. that whatever it's out there, we will all get there someday, some sooner than others later, but we will get there. So embrace everything that's around you, around us. Follow the message that you just say, love one another, and be happy and healthy. Thank you, Victor. Until next time, sir.
My gratitude to you, Ruth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.